You're listening to episode 109, Melissa's Story, a son with transposition of the great arteries. Hello, my friends. I'm so happy that you're here today. And we are on the very last week of February, which is Heart Month. So honored to be able to bring you the story of Melissa and her son. We have had other heart defects on this podcast before, like tetralogy of fallot and other congenital heart defects and hypoplastic left heart. And this is the first one where we're talking about transposition of the great arteries, or TGA. This is something that is diagnosed in utero and requires surgery within days 3 to 7. So I'm so honored to be able to share Melissa's story, and I know that she is going to bring so much value and comfort and validation to other parents. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On-Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On-Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners.
So my name's Melissa, and I'm actually originally from Jacksonville, Florida, but I currently live in Dallas, Texas. I moved here about 5 years ago to be with my now husband. And in those 5 years, we've done a lot. It's been pretty busy. So we bought a house. We had 2 wonderful kids and got married before all of that too. So it was a busy 5 years. You want me to go right into?
No, not at all. I think it's funny. My husband and I, we got married, or we got engaged, we got married, and we moved to Texas and bought a house in 6 months. So I do the same kind of thing. Like, let's just get it all over with.
Yeah, we were on a mission for sure.
So today we're going to be talking about one of your kiddos. So why don't you just kind of start us from the beginning of your journey?
I found out I was pregnant with Jackson, who is my 8-month-old son now, when my daughter was 1 on her first birthday. We found out we were pregnant, and we were so excited. And we were hoping for a boy because we had already had a girl, and we knew we wanted 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl. So it was just the perfect scenario when we found out it was a boy. It was like a dream come true. And I was just, I don't know, it just made me teary just to think like how perfect my life seemed, and was working out like just the way I imagined it. And then we got to our 18-week anatomy scan. So I already had to go to like the high risk, what do they call it? The MFM doctor, to do extra sonograms because of my age. And so we were going like monthly already, but then the 18-week scan came up, and, I think nothing of it. It's like, we're just going through the steps, no big deal, no issues. So we didn't have any issues with my daughter. So didn't plan for anything. And my doctor is just one of the sonogram doctor, was so great because he just always kind of made you feel at ease and talked you through all the steps of everything he was looking at and how great everything looked. And he was so positive. This looks fabulous. Like the blood flow is perfect. And then he got to the heart, and he was just quiet. And he spent like 10 minutes there, which seemed like forever, just kind of scanning over and over. And I just was breathing deep. I was like, I know he's looking at something, but to me, the heart looks like it's pumping normal, looks good. I'm like, I don't see any issues. So I just kind of I tried to be patient and wait. And then I think I was praying at the same time because I just wasn't sure what was going on. And then I finally said, does everything look okay with the heart? And he said, I'm just trying to get a better look. And then he spent another 5 minutes looking around. So I was like, okay, great. This is not going well, and I don't know what it is. So at the end of that, I think it was 10 minutes. It just seemed like forever as I waited. He told me that the heart had a defect, and he tried to describe it, what he thought it was. I honestly, like, everything kind of blew past me. I was like, I don't know what he's talking about other than there's something wrong with the heart. So I tried to just absorb it and understand, like, okay, we have something going on. And then he said, but it's fixable. And so I just held on to that. I was like, okay, something wrong with the heart, but it's fixable. We're going to be okay. I don't know what this means, but I know we can fix it. And he said, I'm going to try to get you in with the cardiologist today. So he left the room. And at the time, my husband wasn't with me because it's during COVID and we couldn't even have visitors in there. So I was by myself hearing this news, which was terrible. So then I texted my husband because he's at work. And so I said, can you talk? There's something wrong with the heart. And then he called me right away. And right when he called, like, I couldn't even talk. I just started crying, even though I was fine a minute before that. But I was just like, I just had to, like, let out whatever, that something was wrong.
Fear.
Yeah. And then I just explained to him that, there's a defect, that he says it's fixable, and I don't know really much more about it, but we're going to go to a heart doctor and check it out and get more information. So luckily we were able to get in just a few hours later, and my husband was able to come to that appointment. So then we went to the cardiologist, who was amazing, and just this guy that made us feel so comfortable and somehow positive, about the situation, which I think you need a doctor like that when you have something like this going on. So they found that he had transposition of the great arteries, which is when your two main arteries leading to the heart are switched. So your aorta and your pulmonary artery are reversed. So they were like running in parallel next to each other, and they're supposed to cross over each other so that the oxygen in the blood can mix, so that it provides your body with enough oxygen to breathe. So that wasn't happening, which while you're in utero, it's totally fine. You don't need that because, I don't know, you're just in an environment where oxygen is everywhere and it doesn't matter. He was safest inside me. The issue comes when he has to breathe on his own and he's born. So I just kind of felt like, all right, while he's inside me, we're safe, we're good, we don't have to worry. It's after that is when kind of the worry begins. But they were able to confirm that it was only this one diagnosis called TGA, and there could be other related defects that happen around it, like a hole in your heart and different things like that. But they weren't seeing any of that. Of course, this is at 18 weeks. And I mean, I can't imagine like how small the heart was at that point, like the size of a bean. I don't even know, but I can't even believe that they have the technology to see what they saw at that small of an age. So we went back every month to get scanned and just confirm that it was still just that one condition, that nothing was getting worse or changing or anything more urgent. But they told us that he will need surgery right after he's born. So day 3 to 7, he'll need open heart surgery to fix, they call it an arterial switch. And that's what they would have to do. And right away after being born, I was planning to have a C-section because I had a C-section with my first. So we had a whole team planned to pretty much take him away right away because he needed to be on medicine to allow his body to have oxygen to breathe and stabilize him just as an infant before going into surgery. So when he was born, I didn't even get to hold him, which was just so weird to me. Just felt awkward. Like they had to take him away. I asked them to hold him next to me just so I can get a picture of him next to me. But like I didn't touch him, it was just the weirdest thing.
That is so strange.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, it happens, and that's just the situation with this sort of thing. So
did you,
it's not like I'm the only one who had to do it, but
yeah, it's a whole other part to grieve of kind of that giving birth that's so different than what your experience was before. And
yeah. And it was grieving the experience. It was like, I had this whole plan of I know the first C-section wasn't planned with my daughter. The second one, I was like, oh, I'm going to get a good night's sleep. I'm going to have the baby and have a great day and have the C-section, get to snuggle with him. And it just turned into just a whole different plan. And I think whenever you have your mind set on something and then that plan changes, it's just a shock to your system, and you have to grieve that experience is just going to be different, and I'm going to lose that. And it was really sad because I know that like this was going to be our last kid, and so I wasn't ever going to get that experience again of having my baby in the hospital room with me, and the nurses coming in to help me breastfeed him and things like that. And it was just really hard because I knew that I wouldn't even get to breastfeed him right away, and that was something I wanted to do as well. So he didn't even get to stay at the hospital with me. He had to get transferred to a children's hospital that was next door. Like within 4 hours, they took him. And so he came, like, I didn't see him. I went back to the room to recover. And then before they transferred him over, he came in this whole transportation bassinet thing with tubes and just things hooked up to him, and inside of like this plastic container where I still couldn't even touch him. But we got a picture next to him before he left. And then later that day, I wanted to go see him at the hospital because I changed the hospital where I was going to deliver just so that they had this policy where once you're stable, you can actually leave and go visit them and then come back to being admitted yourself, which is, was so worth it to me because I can't imagine not seeing him for 3 or 4 days after you're recovering from a C-section. So it got me up really fast. Like I was trying to show to the nurses, I was like, no, see, I'm walking. Like that same day, like within, I don't know, 6 to 12 hours, I don't really remember. I was already like out of the bed walking. Yeah. And I was like, I think I'm okay. I can go over there, and they were like, I think it's a little too soon. So they didn't want me to leave. So my husband went while I rested. And I didn't get to see him until the next day. And I was so sad when they told me I couldn't even like leave to go see my child. I was like, you can't tell me not to go see my child. And like, that made me cry. You have all these emotions after you give birth. It's like crazy enough, and then to not have your child there, it was just,
and be told
hard.
No. Yeah
I know. It was terrible, but I went to go see him, and I walked in. I remember he went to the cardio ICU, not even to just like the normal NICU. So they had kids of all ages in there. So everyone was like, oh, it's our little boyfriend. He was the youngest one there. And so I remember walking in, and the nurse was like, how are you walking in here? You just had a C-section. And I was like, yeah, well, I need to move. It's supposed to be good for me, so it's okay. But it was so good to see him. And he was asleep, but it was actually kind of weird and very different because I didn't feel like I bonded with him right away. I felt like I was going to visit someone's baby. It was just a really different experience because I left. I just went to see him, and then I left. I stayed for like an hour or two. Then I had to go back and rest and get my meds and everything else. So it definitely delayed like the bonding aspect, which was something I didn't really expect. But
yeah, I've had a lot of other parents on this podcast and in the hospital too have that exact experience. It's almost like out of body, like an inability to bond, even though like you want to, and it's very strange. But a lot of people describe that. And during the pregnancy too, like feeling just so removed from, I had that. I had meningitis when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I just remember feeling like, how do I bond with this baby who it was just strange. It's crazy when, your emotional and hormonal mind doesn't match up with what you want.
I know. Yeah, it definitely took longer. But I mean, I wasn't surprised, but it was just still a weird feeling to deal with. But so after he was born in the cardio ICU, we then scheduled his surgery, and they scheduled it for day 5. And I was like, oh, that seems like so far away. Like, I want him to just get the surgery done and over with, like, as soon as possible, because I want to start his recovery, and so he can come home as soon as possible. But they assured me, they were like, no, it's okay. Day 5 is fine. It actually gives him more time to get stable, eat, maybe start to breastfeed, because they said I could actually like go there and attempt to breastfeed him, when I visit, that he should be able to just fine. So it actually ended up being a great thing, because he did breastfeed. He latched and it was great. He was eating well. And I got to hold him and snuggle him more before he had surgery. So that was one thing that, where my expectation changed, where I was like, I want it to be like day 3, like the first day that it can be. And then it was day 5, which is just 2 days later, but it just seems like forever when you're waiting for your child to go through like such a huge surgery. But once that day came, I was like, oh my gosh, like I could have gone another day. Like, Ron, he was doing so well. We got all this bonding time. And that was such a big day that I was like almost not ready for it when it actually came, because knowing what all was involved with it was so scary and so made me so anxious. It's okay to wait a little longer if that's an option. So if that ever comes up with somebody, it's like, don't think it just has to be done as quickly as possible right away. There's positives to waiting just a little bit. But the day before surgery was really hard. I won't say it was the worst day, because the day of surgery was the worst day of my life, I feel like. But the day before, a nurse or someone came by to walk through all the risks of things that could happen with this surgery, the common and less common. And then the hardest one at the end was, it was like the hardest one to hear, and I didn't want to hear it, but they were like, of course, death is a risk. And I was just like, no, I can't hear it. I was like, stop talking. I know that's out there. We don't have to talk about it. And I just started crying. I had to get up and walk around, get a tissue. And it was just, I was like, no. And like, it finally, like, you would know in the back of your head, like any surgery has a risk of that. And you just don't talk about it. It's there, but, and I just didn't want to hear it. And hearing that, then I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, that's when I was really like, oh, I wish it wasn't happening yet. Like, I want more time with him. Everything is just so unknown. You just never know how a body is going to react to anything. But I just, tried to stay positive. The surgeon came by, and it was such a small risk. Like, it was a tiny risk, but it's just knowing that it's a risk at all, it just made me freak out. So the next morning came, they said if we came early enough, we could snuggle him before the surgery. So we were there at like 6 a.m. We had our
You're
daughter
like, challenge accepted. We will be there.
Yeah. I was like, I'll be there as soon as I can. Luckily, we had my parents in town from Florida, and they were staying with my daughter. So we were able to leave and do that when we needed to. But so yeah, we were there and saying goodbye to him. Like, they took him away, and like we just cried. Me and my husband just held each other. It was just the hardest thing, just to know he was being like taken to surgery and not know how it was going to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me for 1 second.
Oh, of course. Take your time.
Okay, so that day, they told us they would give us updates every 90 minutes, which they did. They either called or texted and let us know what was happening.
How long did they tell you the whole surgery was going to be? I imagine 90-minute intervals is like a long time. Yeah. And
I think it took all day. I think they said it would take about 6 hours, but I think it took about 8 hours. total. That was from like when they took them back to when they were done, and there's a lot of prep involved. And then they let us know when he went on bypass, and then when he went off bypass and things like that. And they called us and said when the switch was done. So every time we got a call, of course, we were so anxious to get that call, and we were just sitting in a room waiting, like not his room, but like a little small conference, like waiting room, and going crazy in this room. And like we had to go outside and take walks and just get fresh air while we waited. And it was just the hardest day waiting. Is after we got through, the initial like saying bye to him that morning to go to the surgery, it got better as we waited, where I wasn't as upset as I was in the beginning, just because they were giving me updates and it was going as planned. They said everything was going well. So then, it was like not until the end of the day, like 5 or 6, they took him back at like 8 in the morning, and it was like 6 o'clock when they were done, or 5 o'clock when they were done. And then after they finished, we saw him, we could go in the hallway and stand as they brought him, like walked him to his room. So he was plugged into everything on all, like had tape all over his face with tubes and stuff. It was really hard to see him like that. It was like, he's just so small, and seeing everything he was connected to and all these things going into his body, it was hard. I just felt so bad for him because he's just so little. And one, he doesn't know what's going on, but I knew what that was happening to him, and I just felt so bad for him. But he had a successful surgery, and he was doing good. He was stable. And they took him back to the room, and we had to wait for about an hour before we could even go into the room. So we watched him walk by, we took a picture, and then we got to see him once they got him stable in the room and hooked up to everything. And that was hard, but we were exhausted. So we stayed for about an hour then, and then we went home to get some rest because we were just so tired from the emotional exhaustion from the day. And they also said that night is not a night you want to be there in the room with him, because the lights are on all night, and there's doctors and staff in there monitoring him and checking everything all hours. So if we were there, we wouldn't get sleep, but we would also probably be in their way. So they wanted us to say hi and then go so they could do their thing. And then of course we came back the next morning. But he was doing really well. They said best case scenario, surgery went great. It was done perfectly, pretty much. And I was told that, every day we'll get a little bit better. Tubes and things will get taken off. So every day he'll look more normal, and just less hooked up to him. And the first day he had everything, but then the second day on, like really day by day, they started taking things off, and he looked so much better. And then I think it only took like a few days where he was able to move up to the cardio floor, just the regular cardiovascular unit, not the ICU. So that was like a really big step to be able to move up there like quicker than planned. Like he was doing really good. And I even, once he was off intubation, I was able to breastfeed him again, and he was able to latch. And it was such a huge win. It made me so happy that he was eating well and just improving really fast.
We'll be right back. We are sponsored by Magic Mind. I am such a coffee person. I enjoy the taste and the smell in my morning routine. But the truth is, I go beyond that 1 cup of Morning Joe, and my 2 to 3 day cup habit is expensive and not that effective in the long run. Thankfully, Magic Mind has come into my life. It's a small green shot-sized drink of all natural ingredients like adaptogens to decrease stress, nootropics to boost blood flow and cognition, and unlike regular energy drinks, Magic Mind has minimal caffeine, all of which comes from matcha. After a few days in a row of drinking Magic Mind, I notice I have less brain fog and feel more productive without an afternoon slump. You can try it and get 20% off Magic Mind by going to magicmind.co/childlife and using code CHILDLIFE. If you are looking for a way to make a child in your life smile, then you have to go to smilemakers.com and go through all of the must-have toys, stickers, and prizes for kids. You'll find everything you need to make the hospital, waiting room, or even your own living room more fun with games, crafts, and prizes for every occasion. I also have very good news for you because when you go to smilemakers.com and type in OnCall20, you will get 20% off with no minimum order required. So stock up on bundles made specifically for hospital procedures and therapeutic play, and make these already very affordable items more affordable with OnCall20. That's smilemakers.com and OnCall20 for 20% off your entire order.
So when he was on the cardio floor, though, his numbers were still off. Like, they're tracking his oxygen, his respiratory rate, which is how many breaths he takes in a minute. For a normal adult, we take about 15 breaths in a minute. For children, it's a lot higher. Like, let's say 40 is probably normal for like my toddler, maybe now, I'm not sure, but he was at like 60 and above, so more of like 80, 90. So which is really high breaths per minute. So that was high, and his oxygen was low. He was going below a normal range, like majority of the time. And they said like that's normal because he just had surgery. It's going to take time for it to normalize, but this is expected. They redid some echocardiograms where that was like a sonogram of your heart, and they would do that every couple days. So after like a week, or maybe less than a week, they noticed that he had some narrowing of his arteries, which it's called stenosis. It's like stretching, because they had to take these little tubes, your pulmonary and aorta arteries, and switch them and stretch them to go to where they needed to go. So a little thinning or stretching can occur, which narrows those arteries. They noticed it, and they were like, this is a normal side effect from this. This isn't something you have to treat. It could be like later in life, like maybe when he's 3 or when he's 7, he might need a balloon stent put in just to keep those arteries open so that the blood can flow through. And that's like an outpatient thing, and they're like, no big deal, it happens, it's fine, so nothing abnormal here. But then they repeated that like 2 days later, and they found that it was narrowing even more. Like, it was super rapidly narrowing in a very abnormal way. So they got the surgeon involved to like take a look at it. And this was like hardest day number 2, when the doctor came to me and said, okay, we're seeing something that we haven't seen before. This is pretty abnormal. They're narrowing so much. The surgeon wants to go back in and fix it. And I was like, are you serious? Like, you want to open him up again and do another heart surgery? Like, it hasn't even been a week, and I freaked out all over again. I was like, no, you can't do this. Like, is there any other option? There was no other option. They said that it's narrowing so much that they would need to do a patch on his arteries. So they would take tissue from like around his heart, I think, cartilage, and patch his arteries with that. So it was tissue that came from him, so his body wouldn't reject it. It's not like something else that you're adding in there. Mm-hmm. And like add a little patch to both of the arteries, which I mean, again, like, these are so tiny. Like, how do you even do that? Yeah. This is all like the size of an inch or less, or yeah. I don't even know, the arteries are probably even less than that, because that's the size of a heart. So I freaked out. Like, I just couldn't believe that he needed a second surgery. It was like, I was angry. I was like, did we miss something? And no, we didn't miss anything. The surgery went great. The surgeon was amazing. It's something just weird where my son Jackson is just a unique one, and he's just had a few things where he's just like, the first time this has happened, and just does it his own way.
Yeah.
So, a week after his surgery, about a week later from the first surgery, we had to do a second surgery. And another scary day. We came in and snuggled him in the morning, cried as he left, and waited in a waiting room for him to go through it. And I was like, you know what, we had one chance at this where like he did great and he recovered. They all said it was like better than they could have imagined. They were like ready to send him home. And then we noticed like his numbers were off. And so I left something out. Like, so they thought he was doing so well that he could go home. Like they were like, he could go home today. He could go home tomorrow. This was before we knew about the second surgery. And I was like, I just feel off because his numbers are so high or so low, or they're just so off. Something doesn't seem right. I would love it if you guys could just keep him another day. It's like they thought he was looking good and everything was normal, but my mother gut intuition was something's off. And the same with my husband. We were both like, we'd feel more comfortable if he just stayed one more day. And that one more night, because we felt like, we needed to just do that. It was like too soon. He would have come home in less than like 2 weeks, which was way ahead of schedule. We were just like, it seems like too good to be true. That one night they did another scan overnight, and that's when they found this issue.
Wow.
So I don't know how we would have found it or how long it would have taken if we waited and just, followed like, oh yeah, he could go home. Because of course we wanted to bring him home, but it's really scary for a parent to bring home a child that isn't 100% well, and I didn't want to bring him home if his oxygen wasn't right. I would have been so paranoid, like having him sleeping and not sure if he was getting enough oxygen or his heart was beating too fast. Like that scares me more than the hurt of him not being home and him being in the hospital another night. So anyways, at that point, I'm just, advocate for yourself, advocate for your child. If you feel like something's not right, say something. He's your child, or she or he is your child. It's like, if you want something different, like they're following your lead. If you say, no, he's staying, like, and you don't feel comfortable, they're not going to turn you down. So, just pay attention to what you're feeling, because your child best, even though I felt like I didn't know my child because he's in the hospital and I don't really know him that well because I'm not with him 24/7. I was like, the nurses probably know him just as much as me. Like, it was just a weird feeling, but I knew that I didn't feel comfortable and that something didn't seem right. So that kept him in there. But, so anyways, we had the second surgery. They patched, the arteries. They found another weird thing that was very unique to him. Apparently we're all born with, this fatty layer of tissue over our chest called the thymus. I didn't know what it was before this. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
You sound like an expert right now, and I'm very impressed that you did not go to medical school.
Oh my gosh, no. But thank you. Yeah, so this tissue that like lays over your chest it kind of like, it's meant to protect you from infections when you're born, but then it just kind of fades away over time. So you don't need it. It was like inflamed and it shrink wrapped around his arteries and was like pinching them almost. And it was so weird. It was almost like they were like attacking his arteries in a way, like they were so like swollen and stuck to them. And so we actually didn't know, was that causing the thinning of his arteries? Like, is that why they were narrowing so quickly, because this tissue was like shrink wrapped around it? Or was it really just that they needed to be patched? So we didn't know the issue. The surgeon was great. And he's like, I don't care which one is the issue. I'm going to fix both of them. So he removed all of the thymus, all the tissue that you don't need, from around the arteries. And he did the patch because he's like, there's not going to be any reason for us to ever need to go back in here. I'm going to do both possibilities just to make sure we cover our bases. So we didn't know that was going to happen, and we didn't know about it until the surgery was over. But they said the surgery would take like 4 hours, and it took maybe 6 hours because of that being added to it.
Wow.
And we didn't know why it was taking so long. I mean, they gave us all the updates, but they didn't explain that over the phone with the nurse. They waited for the surgeon. After each surgery, the surgeon came in and talked to us and kind of told us how things went. So he explained that to us, and we're just like, oh my gosh, Jackson is this unique character that just like, first time that the surgeon's ever seen this. It's the first time the surgeon, he's like the head of surgery, and he was the first time he had to go back and redo, do something different to a heart surgery a week after being done. And so, and it probably was related to that weird thymus thing. Like, that most likely was it, but we don't know, and we'll never know. But, I mean, he fixed it. So now we just had to go through, like, he came out just fine because he had a little bit less tubes and things than the first time, but he did have to be intubated again. So it's just, you have to go through all the steps of starting over.
It's like recovery again.
Yeah. And like learning to swallow.
Yeah.
Like the things that he did really well with on the first surgery, he had a really hard time with on the second surgery. I mean, that was so much for his little body to go through 2 surgeries within 2 weeks. So that second surgery just took a toll on him. And I could tell like he was like struggling, but he was stable. He was doing well. It just took a really long time for him to recover. And we had some other complications along the way, just side effects from surgery with different things. He did have more fluid around his lungs. He had to go back on medicine for that. Took a lot longer for that to go away. The first time it went away really fast, like he was like a rock star. And the second time it was like everything just kind of lagged a lot. And he had more like inflammation inside with his diaphragm and lungs and different things. So it just took a while. Meanwhile, we also found that he had a dairy allergy or a milk protein allergy. So he was having side effects from that then I had to stop eating dairy so that I could breastfeed him. It was just like all of this going on at once. And I was like, we don't need these other little issues happening. Like he's recovering from heart surgery. I was like,
you're like, come on, dairy allergy,
you know?
Yeah.
I was like, we don't need to deal with this right now. But anyways, so, it just seemed like so much. So those 2 weeks of going through both surgeries and just the ups and downs, the emotional roller coaster of it all, it was like the hardest 2 weeks of my life, the most stressed I've ever been. I felt like I was at a breaking point. Anything anyone said, I was just so on edge and just kind of just like angry with the world that he had to have a second surgery. I don't know. Some days I was just like, I don't know how I'm making it through the day. And I would just like, you're already emotional just from the hormones of having a baby. And I was just, would cry for no reason or big reason, but it was just so much stress.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention recovering from surgery and a 9-month pregnancy and the stress of being pregnant and all that you had going on. What do you think helped you the most when you were in the hospital? Like, what kind of role did you take on? Did you write down a lot of notes? Did you want to be at rounds every day? Did you like have a social worker that supported you? What kind of helped you through that part?
Oh, yeah. So, I did have a social worker and she was amazing. I had met our social worker when we were going through the process. The doctors did, like, they wanted to meet you ahead of time, knowing that you're going to have a heart surgery. So we met the team, we did a tour, and my social worker at the time, it was just like, okay, great. I have a social worker. Nice to meet you. Bye. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to need this person, but I've never had a social worker before. I don't really know how they work with you. But when we were in the hospital, she came by every day and she became one of my closest people and allies in everything. Like she, helped me to survive all of it. Like she was someone that I just vented to and talked to and just told her how I was feeling. She was someone I said, hey, I need something for my child. Can you help me get it? She was there for me for anything, whether it was related to like something that would make me more comfortable with breastfeeding in the room, or something like a medicine I wanted to know, like, does my child really need this? Or can you get with the doctor and make sure I get clarity on what this test result means? And she would call them for me and make sure they came to the room and talked to me. But I mean, the biggest thing was just, she was there to listen to me. And like, that's how I survived, I think, because I don't think I would have been able to get through it all without her. Like, you have your family and you have your husband. But she was always there, and she's just assigned to heart patients. So she knew the situation and a lot about what was going on. And she deals with families around this all the time. And so she knew what to ask me about, like, how I was feeling and what I thought about something, or if I needed a certain thing. And she would just offer to help. And it was amazing. And I'm just so thankful for her. And I'm still I still keep in touch with her today. I email her pictures of Jackson and let her know how he's doing. And she would always come in every day and say, how's my boyfriend doing today? So that was a huge help. And I don't know if that's like a regular thing that social workers are always assigned to children when they have surgeries, but if that's an option, I mean, use that role. It was just amazing. Like, go to that person and use them, because it was just the biggest help that I didn't know that I needed.
Because sometimes you don't even know what to ask for in those moments. So having a person on the team who gets the clinical side, but also is there just for you, is really, really important.
Yeah, and it felt like she was there to take care of me and my child, because no one was taking care of me. Like, I'm there to take care of my child. When my husband comes, he's there to take care of our child. And like, who takes care of, the mom who just had a baby? And she was always there for me, to just ask, what she could do to make my time there better and to help. But yeah, she was a savior. But I did just go there just being there with him was the best thing that I could do. It's the only way I felt like I could help, was just to be there and hold him. And when I couldn't be there because I had to be home with my daughter, I asked for volunteers. The hospital had volunteers to hold babies. And so I didn't care if it was a stranger, or someone I didn't know, but it was just, I wanted someone to be holding him and giving him attention and him feeling warmth from a body. And so they were really good about helping with that. And that's also something the social worker helped set up to make sure that volunteers were able to come. He also loved when music therapy came by. So there was this girl, she was amazing. She'd play the guitar and sing, and he just would stare at her and smile, or he would fall asleep while she was playing because it was so relaxing.
So sweet.
Yeah, so it was really nice. But I just felt so bad for Jackson, because he ended up being in the hospital for 5 weeks. And towards the end, I would just, I'd go there every day and see him. And when I walk in, I just felt so sad, because he looked depressed to me, and it broke my heart, because he would just be like staring at a wall or staring up, because what else is there to look at? And I just felt like, he's like, what is my life? Like, I'm living now, and I just live in this room in this little bassinet. Like, what am I doing? And he just seemed like, I felt like he was depressed, and it made me so sad. And so towards like the 4th week, I was like, we got to get him home. Like, he can't grow up here. I was like, it's taking a toll on me. And I feel like for him, like for his mental state, like he needs to be home. So, I mean, we had to wait till he was stable enough and his numbers were at a point where he felt comfortable. And that took a full 5 weeks. And exactly on 5 weeks is when he was able to come home. So we were so thankful for that day. And then all we had to worry about at that point was, well, this is what they told us. They said, all you had to worry about when you take your child home from the surgery is just raising a normal baby, worrying about baby things like changing diapers and if they're sleeping at night and things like that. But there was a ton of appointments. There's a lot of follow-up. We went to the doctor like a few times a week, for the next several weeks, which is good because I wanted people to have eyes on him and always be checking him. And everything was good with him after that. And we were very fortunate because I started to lose faith in anything positive that anybody said, because I was like, anything can change in a day. Like you could say, he looks great right now, and then tomorrow something could happen and he could have a side effect that we didn't expect. And so I was like, I myself got to I got to a depressed point where I was just really down. Splitting my time between 2 kids and 2 homes was hard. And that's really stressful. I felt bad for my daughter, not being there for her all the time. Felt bad not being with my son all the time. There's just so much. And so I was definitely depressed and angry and I felt bad for my son. But luckily, we're so thankful Like the hospital and the surgeons and the nurses, they saved his life. Like, I mean, we have our child, so we're just so happy. And right now he's 8 months old and he's doing awesome. And his heart is all clear and healed. Of course, it's a forever diagnosis where we have to monitor it for the rest of his life. And they'll do different tests as he gets older and gets to like the age where he might do more cardio exercises or sports and things like that. But I mean, for scans that he's done, his most recent one was around Christmas and he was all clear and everything looked perfect. So we're just so thankful that he's doing well. And we just pray that, it stays that way. So, of course, it's something you always worry about, but at least I'm in a place where I'm more positive versus when I was in it. It was kind of a very dark and negative, like thought, worrying, anxious place in life. So I'm just so glad that we're past that, because you really, when you're in it, I knew this at the time, everything's a phase. I knew it wouldn't last forever. And I knew that this was just a terrible phase to be in. And I just couldn't wait for us to get past it. And it took a while to get past it, but we did. So just when you're in something, in a hard situation, just know, like, even with raising my toddler, she makes things hard a lot of times, but you just have to remember that it's all a phase. It'll pass. Something will change and it'll always be up and down. But I knew that the pain I was in and that he was in at that time wouldn't last forever. So I just had to get through the best I could.
Well, he's certainly lucky to have you as his mom, and to the fact that you spoke up and advocated at the hospital. And like I said, you're speaking so eloquently in this foreign language that you never knew before. He's lucky that he got you to be his mom. I'd love to, one of my favorite questions to end with is just telling us a little bit about his personality right now as an 8-month-old little guy, and some of the what he's taught you the most in the past year.
Oh my gosh. So he's amazing. He's like the most chill kid. I think we say, like, he's probably just so happy to be out of the hospital that he's just like the happiest boy. Aww. He always smiles. He is like, he never cries. He only cries when he like truly needs something, like he's tired, he needs to eat, or he has a dirty diaper. So like, it's really easy to figure out what he needs when he's crying. Otherwise, he's just staring around like a jolly old kid and looks at his sister while she's like screaming and having a tantrum. He just smiles at her with so much love. It's like, he's the cutest thing. He's so sweet. He's just such like a ray of light in our lives, and we can't help but like cheer up when we see him. But he's just such a happy, smiling, chill boy, and we're very lucky that he's such a good baby. We just really feel so much love for him and from him. It's the best. So I'm really thankful he's okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being so honest today. And you shared a lot of really, really hard things that you have been through. So it's pretty miraculous to be able to listen to someone like you be so honest and open about how things really went and be able to process it all. So thank you so, so much. It's not lost on me at all that you shared this today to help other people. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope it does help someone going through a similar condition. And I appreciate you letting me share my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.